Guy Benson Show.
We're back. Glad to have you with us on the Guy Benson Show, GuyBensonShow.com. That's our website. The podcast is free. When the program is over, that's every single day. Back with us now is Congressman Mike Gallagher, Republican of Wisconsin. He is chairman of the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. He's a military veteran, served in the U.S. Marine Corps. And Congressman, it is always good to have you here.
It's great to be back. How many times have I been on? Am I beating Mike Lee?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're way past Mike Lee. Lee is a really hard booking these days. I don't know what that's about. We should probably clip this segment and send it to him as a gauntlet.
Well, yeah, I think it's clear that Senator Lee is afraid to come on your program. Can't handle the tough questions. Probably speaks to a broader lack of intestinal fortitude that Senator Lee has. I mean, that's not a lot of people are saying that, not me.
Many people are saying. Many people are saying. And I will also point out, coincidence, you decide, we will be spending some time very soon in your home state because our son will be born in Wisconsin. I know you were texting me the other day saying that means that we have to raise him by law. As a Green Bay Packers fan, I don't think that's going to happen. But you at least gave it a shot, right? I didn't see any lobbying for Utah.
Well, I'm not, I don't make state law, but it is what it is. Like, you have no choice in the matter. There's also, on a serious note, in Wisconsin, your kids are allowed to drink at bars, even if they're underage, if they're with you. Now, I don't know if there's reciprocity between the states, but I would argue, and perhaps if Senator Lee were willing to come on your show as a constitutional lawyer, you could argue that should be able to travel with your son no matter what state he goes to, provided he's with you.
So hang on, and we're far afield from what I really want to talk about, but now I'm intrigued. The law in Wisconsin is if you are a kid, you're a minor under the age of 21, but you're with your parents at a bar or restaurant, that individual can drink alcohol with parental consent. Is there like an age cutoff, or is this for children of all ages?
I think it's all ages with the exception of 18 to 21, because when you're 18, you are an adult, so you're kind of in no man's land. It's a weird quirk of Wisconsin.
Oh, so if you're like 16, you can have a beer with your parents at the bar, but if you're 18, they can't consent to it because you're an adult, but you're not of drinking age? That is so weird.
Yeah, besides the fact that the Upper Peninsula was stolen from us by Michigan, it's one of the bigger absurdities of Wisconsin right now. So,
okay,
these are the issues people care about, guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would love to keep talking about this because it's actually sort of interesting and strange and fun. But unfortunately, we have more serious things to discuss today, Congressman. We just spent the first half hour of the show reflecting on 1 month since the slaughter of Israeli civilians by Hamas, and not just the horrible atrocity that took place that day, but really the stomach-turning reaction to it in much of the Western world, and even some of the debates we're having right now in America are just, to me, breathtaking. That there is even a discussion about, did this really happen, for example, or does Israel have any meaningful right to defend itself? There are people taking the completely wrong side of that, openly, proudly, and worse. Just some of your thoughts on what happened a month ago and what has been playing out since.
As I read the situation right now, and I guess I could be wrong, it seems to me that the Biden administration started off strong with their unequivocal support for Israel, its right to defend itself, and the necessity of dismantling and destroying Hamas. Now it seems they are succumbing to pressure from the far left. And what we've seen from the radical left, the Intifada left, the Hamas caucus, is absolutely disgusting. This is probably best represented by Representative Tlaib's disgraceful comments, basically saying that from the river to the sea is an aspirational call for human rights and justice, which is crazy. I mean, that's like saying Mein Kampf was like the utopian vision of a failed artist. Like, it makes no sense. What from the river to the sea means, or how Hamas means it, is the complete elimination of the state of Israel. It is a genocidal call to arms against
Well, and she embraces
Israelis.
it. And since you brought up Tlaib, I just do want to ask you specifically about her. She's used that from the river to the sea. She's lied about what it means. She's accused Israel and the United States, and Joe Biden specifically, of genocide, which is an outrageous thing to say. Terrible, untrue, lie. She also, of course, repeated over and over again the Hamas misinformation propaganda about Israel bombing a hospital, killing hundreds of people. That didn't happen. She's done all of this stuff. And then I saw earlier this afternoon, she was tearfully on the floor defending herself against a potential censure. Like, oh, this is just about the humanity of Palestinian people, and I only criticize Israeli policy, and it's disheartening and dehumanizing to hear the president dispute death tolls. Well, the president disputed the death tolls because the death tolls should be disputed because they're provided by Hamas, a terrorist organization that should not be trusted. Apparently, she trusts them for some reason. She's playing the victim. I'll have a lot more to say about this later in the show, Congressman, but she's playing the victim. She's saying that all of the really atrocious things that she's been doing and saying, just never mind all that. Don't look at any of that. This is just coming after her because of who she is and her Palestinian identity. What do you make of this most recent push that might actually succeed this time to censure Rashida Tlaib?
Well, didn't she run an ad? Like, she cut an ad criticizing Biden. So how is she a victim? If she's
for genocide.
Attacking, the president of her own party for supporting Israel. It makes absolutely no sense. Maybe add one thing to the discussion, however. It's, that's the most radical form of it. But then you have some figures, including the person I would argue is the most powerful and popular figure in the Democratic Party, Barack Obama, who have said things that are not quite as bad, but very abhorrent nonetheless. I mean, Obama went on Pod Save America and said, everyone has a part of the blame. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, he sounds not like a statesman-like former president, but rather like a progressive community organizer in Chicago. And I guess, however, part of that statement is true, but perhaps not in the way he meant it, in that his policies in the Middle East are to blame for empowering Iran and, by extension, Hamas. And it is the Biden administration's commitment, and it's like a zealous commitment to Obama's Iran deal that is preventing them from learning from the chaos we're seeing in the Middle East and implementing a policy that makes more sense. So, from Tlaib to Obama, we're seeing some pretty crazy things come out of the American left. And it's very troubling because, of course, we're also seeing domestic incidents of anti-Semitic language as well as violence here domestically. I mean, college campuses are just like a cesspool for anti-Semitic language right now. And it's being done by the same professors who constantly lecture us about their moral superiority and fight for social justice. I mean, if standing against the genocidal death cult as it murders innocent people and beheads babies is not like the ultimate social justice cause, then I don't know what is. Then social justice means nothing.
Yeah, then we should not take their lead ever again on moral questions or social justice. Like, they are forfeiting any authority or credibility that they have. If they talk about decolonization and then they define decolonization as what happened on October 7th, that's like, okay, thanks for the heads up. That is very good to know. We will never listen to you again. This is not just nonsense garbage. It's actually genocidal and dangerous. So, I mean, it's been revealing, but it's absolutely extremely troubling. And part of the picture, and this is what I was eager to talk to you specifically about, Congressman, because you are the chairman of this bipartisan joint select committee on the Chinese Communist Party. I have seen now a number of different stories, like deep dives, but also anecdotes into what is popping up in the algorithms and the feeds of American young people, especially on TikTok, where they're being fed content. And you look at young people who are most backwards on this question, who just know nothing. They're ignorant, but they are passionate on the Palestinian side, and they're getting just sort of force-fed, ramrodded this content in front of their eyeballs on these little devices on TikTok where they spend a lot of their time. That can't be a coincidence, number one. And number two, I'm very worried if you have this Chinese tech company perhaps almost certainly putting their thumb on the scale here on that conflict. God forbid down the line we ever get into a full-blown conflict with China. No one wants that. But if it were to happen, I mean, would we have much of our young population taking the pro-China, anti-American side because that's what's being served to them by the Chinese propaganda and espionage tool that's installed on all of their phones that they're addicted to?
Well, you perfectly framed the risk, right? The risk with TikTok is not just that it wastes time and makes you stupider, which it does, or even that it's spyware that can track your location and your browsing history, which it can. It's that it can shape the information that you get and what you believe to be true. And allowing a CCP-controlled company to be the dominant media company in America. And keep in mind, young Americans go to TikTok not just for dancing videos, but for news.
Yep.
It's a news source for young Americans. That's like a near suicidal strategy for us. And while you can say, all right, there's no definitive proof that they tweak the algorithm this way or that, based on the CCP's behavior in other domains, based on their active effort to intimidate anyone who's critical of the regime or has the temerity to bring up the genocide in Xinjiang, which, by the way, where are all the pro-Muslim social justice activists on that issue?
Good
I noticed
question.
that falls off their radar.
Yeah.
Of course they would use this tool for their evil purposes if we allow them to. All the more reason why we need to ban or force a sale before it's too late. And a forced sale would allow all the American investors who have shares in ByteDance to still make money. We would just need to have control of the algorithm, because it's control of the algorithm that is the core of the issue.
Yep. And you got kids with their feeds just populated with like 3, 4, 5 to 1 pro-Palestine, quote unquote, pro-Hamas propaganda in a lot of cases. And that's where they are likely to head because they don't have other sources of information. And this is what their friends are all seeing as well. You made such a good point, by the way, about Xinjiang. So here's an actual literal and cultural genocide of a Muslim minority. You hear all the screaming from certain people about the so-called open-air prison of Gaza and apartheid and ethnic cleansing and genocide and all these things. And a lot of that, I keep saying, is projection. What they accuse Israel of is what Hamas is guilty of and the Palestinian culture is often guilty of. Well, what the Chinese Communist Party is doing to Uyghur Muslims in China, to your point, Western China, it is like textbook to a T. Actually, all the things that they're accusing Israel of, China's been doing it for years, and it's just been deafening silence from almost all of these exact same people. Perhaps, Congressman, is it too cynical to say because there are no Jews to blame for this, and in fact they would have to blame communists, so they really don't want to do either of those things?
It could be that, and it could also be there's been silence among even our traditional allies in the region, the Sunni Arab Gulf states, and I think that's more a story of wanting economic relationships with China, wanting Chinese money, wanting Chinese infrastructure, and Chinese infrastructure, of course, doesn't come with some of the same caveats that American money does because China has no concern over human rights. And that's really an interesting thing that's happening in the Middle East right now. It's as we seek to leave, we're sort of ceding influence to the Chinese. And China obviously has an increasing partnership with Iran. My view is that Iran, China, and Russia are increasingly looking like an axis of authoritarian powers arrayed against our interests. And so all the more reason why we need to have a strong policy in the Middle East with our closest ally, Israel, as well as build upon the increasing rapprochement between Israel and the Sunni Arab Gulf states to counter China, because it will seize on every opportunity they have to drive a wedge between us and our traditional allies and partners.
One more China-related question, and I've been very curious about this. I'm sure you're better informed about it than I am. Apparently, there has been this trend on social media and online within China to remove Israel from the map of the world that's accessible in online form to people living in China. To what extent is that true? Obviously, that doesn't just happen. That would be the regime. That would be the CCP making a decision to do that. Why is that happening? What's going on here?
Yeah, there was a Chinese app that sort of literally wiped Israel off the map. It removed sort of Israel's name from the area surrounding China, and there was no explanation for it. It was sort of an abrupt change. We've seen versions of this play out in other forums, like how Taiwan is referred to on various Chinese apps and platforms, often referred to as Chinese Taipei. Yet another reminder of how stupid it would be to allow China to control the commanding heights of technology, because they can do things subtly and not so subtly to shape the information that people get. So just another example of the lengths to which China will go to weaponize web platforms like Baidu and Alibaba, and those were the two that were implicated in this Wall Street Journal report, in order to, go after the United States and our allies.
Congressman Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin, our guest. He chairs that House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. Always a great conversation, Congressman. Look forward to being back in your state sometime soon, hopefully next week or beyond. That's what we're rooting for. I'm sure we'll talk again here on and off the air very soon. We always appreciate your